Hello and welcome to another episode of the FinTalk Show at Pros AI. In today's episode, we're extremely excited to have Marino, President of WinkPay. Welcome to the show, Matt.
It's great to be here.
Matt, maybe you can start by introducing yourself and tell our audience who you are, what's your background, and maybe a bit of background about Wink.
You bet. So Matt Marino, based in the Northwest here in Seattle, Washington. The short bio on me is I've got a bit of a technical engineering background, who later turned to the dark side and ended up in sales and business. But effectively, I've spent my entire professional career in fintech. So helping both startups as well as large Fortune 100 businesses with payments, fraud management, security, and just overall improving the ways with which merchants and consumers pay. So that leads me to the current company that I'm at, Wink, which essentially is focused on biometric payment processing. So enabling merchants to offer the ability for consumers to have their face or their palm scanned or even their voice understood and link it with a payment transaction. And one of the trends that we're seeing globally is the need to tie account information with an identity and less so with a 16-digit number or a piece of plastic in your wallet. And certainly the trends in biometrics are very popular in places like for Asia, for example. And when it comes to payment processing, the U.S. has always lagged the rest of the world, right? We were slow to adopt chip and PIN. We were slow to adopt contactless payments, which are now pretty standard, right? People are very familiar with tapping their phone, whatever. And the next wave is coming with biometrics. So again, enabling consumers to use their face or their palm to pay for things. And so there's a lot of exciting use cases that we can get into and talk more about, but things like events and stadiums, quick service restaurants, omni-channel retailers, et cetera. So it's again a dynamic, fun space, and more. What I really enjoy about it is getting to see how merchants are able to reimagine the experiences that they want to have for the customers that they serve and sell to every day.
Fantastic, fantastic. What would you tell if you were to put it to the audience in one word? How would you describe Wink and how is it different from traditional payments or identity solutions?
Well, how we are unique is that this is a biometrics and payments application that can sit on any payment gateway or any point of sale device. So historic solutions required you to go and buy a unique terminal or kiosk or install a specific set of hardware. And we're really proud of our engineering team for being able to deploy, an SDK or an APK that can be installed natively on, again, any device with a camera or any a technical gateway. Because we realize a big hurdle to prior adoption was just the switching costs, and most merchants on average change their hardware every 7 years or so. And so we realized in order to get this into the hands of more merchants as quickly as possible, it needed to be really easy to turn on and activate and not be disruptive within their current flow.
Right. And what's the advantage of actually having the platform as a unified platform as opposed to maybe focusing on just biometrics or just payments? What advantages do you see?
Well, there's certainly like a cost advantage, right, of being able to route the biometric information, the payment information, the merchant services information all in one payload. I mean, we have some clients that prefer that. We have some clients that again just want to do the biometrics with us.
Right.
But what we see also is most merchants, particularly like the larger ones, they ultimately
Right.
want control of their brand, of the data,
Right.
and of the life cycle of the transaction. And so when you see other third-party brands sitting on top of the whether it's, Apple Pay or a certain terminal that has another brand on it, or, we're all familiar with them.
Yeah.
Not only do they obfuscate and hide some of that data, but it removes some of the branding that's really important for that merchant. And ultimately, like, for some of the immediate benefits for these biometric use cases are a lot of kind of obvious ones that come to mind, such as faster throughput through the checkout turnstiles, right? You don't need to take out your wallet or your purse or your phone.
Right.
There essentially like eliminates fraud completely, because while it's maybe relatively easy to steal a credit card number, it's much harder to spoof a liveness detection that looks at, face and palm.
Mhm.
But also too, one thing that has really come about, that we're tracking closely over the past year, has been the integration of identity with loyalty, and being able to provide loyalty information, rewards, insights, immediately at the transaction, at the time of sale.
Right.
I mean, a perfect use case for me is, I mean, I go to a local coffee shop here in Seattle.
Right.
These guys know me, they know my name, they know what I order. I come in, they make my drink, they process my payment. And every once in a while, they give me a free drink, which is nice. And all that sort of happens on its own, like you know, in a in a kind of friendly sort of way. But for them, it's not very scalable, right? This is like one small coffee shop. But if you can think
That's
about reimagining that type of experience at scale for a large department store, or a clothing manufacturer, or a chain of coffee shops, it becomes really fun, because you can do a lot more things at the point of sale with pushing offers, rewards, and things that just make the purchase experience better for
yeah.
the customer.
Right. That's actually a very good analogy you give. Like, going to the coffee shop, they know you, but that's the experience that you now want to amplify using your solution for scalability.
Yeah.
Um, how do biometrics payments work in real life? Can you just maybe walk your audience through what happens behind the scenes, like what really happens with biometrics?
Sh- Sure. So what's happening is the camera on the device, and this could be any device with a camera on it. So a smart point of sale device, a kiosk, but it could also be a laptop or even a mobile device.
Right.
The camera is looking at a live detection of the individual's face
Right.
and or their palm.
Mhm.
And in that process, we're not actually taking an image of the face or the palm, but we're mapping a unique set of vectors of the
Mhm.
biometric. So for the face, for example, it's like the distance between the eyes and the nose and the chin and the teeth and the ear and the forehead, and all the sort of things that make an identity unique. And so there's
Mhm.
a complex set of AI that uses these different biometric vectors that are anonymized, of course, that aren't never
Yeah.
tied to somebody's name. And we have to do
Yeah.
that for PCI and SOC 2 and a whole bunch of other kind of compliance purposes. But that biometric data is then stored and associated with your
Mhm.
preferred payment information.
Right.
And so when we see then a face or a palm at a ball game or a coffee shop or a department store, it's able to process the transaction right away.
Right, fantastic. And what happens if the biometrics fail, for example? Do you see such cases? Are they common? Are they rare? Or is this really well proven now?
Yeah, and partly also another area that makes Wink, I'd say, unique is that this application is designed to be multimodal. So that if, for example, if the facial detection were to fail for some reason, let's say there's a really bad, I don't know, lighting, like backlight or something, we can't really tell.
Yeah.
Then in that, if there is that sort of failure, then it will prompt for the person to use their palm, and if that fails, then it would just go back to a normal card transaction, right? Where they just put
Right.
in their payment device. And I think the other reminder too is like this is all optional, right? Like the merchants who adopt this, they're not enforcing or requiring their customers to use this. It's just it's an optional service that should hopefully give benefit back to the customer by having the transaction be safer, faster,
Right.
provide more
Right.
loyalty, and so on.
Yeah, fantastic. You integrated recently with Pays and have, over 150 plus cards already. How does that change the game for, for merchants especially?
Sure, and if the audience is not familiar with Pays, Pays is sort of the sister company to Zelle, which is of course in the United States. Zelle is the big peer-to-peer money transmission service in the United States, and Pays, I believe, now has I think 150 million or 200 million, a lot of cardholders who are already enrolled, and I think by sheer number, they're the largest digital wallet in the United States because you have all of these member banks, Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, et cetera, Capital One. They're all integrated with this program, and so assuming you have a bank account with one of these banks. Our integration with Pays allows for the access with that digital wallet. So for us, it's just a way of kind of obtaining the secure credit card information to make these payments as simple as possible so that users don't have to, enroll manually.
Very good, very good. And why is bank backed checkout becoming more important now? Because this is more to where you're heading to. Why is that becoming more important in your view?
Well, we're certainly seeing a interest from merchants, right? Because it's things we talked about, the faster line conversions, faster checkout. But many banks are adopting this as well. I mean, most notably, JP Morgan Chase and their whole merchant services line is pushing biometric payments hard. I mean, they've got their own line of terminals. I mean, I think their flagship use case is at the Chase Center in San Francisco, where you can walk in, have your face scanned, to recognize your ticket. You can go buy concessions and beers and all that kind of stuff by using your face. And so I think that the banks are doing this because banks are clearly concerned about security and keeping fraud low, and so they know that biometrics again is a faster way of linking payment information with identity, but also they're taking a cue from the card schemes. So Visa and MasterCard have said publicly that they plan to phase out physical cards. Even MasterCard has said that by 2030, the 16-digit number that we're all familiar with on cards are going to be gone. And so there's a
Okay.
slow movement of realizing, hey, like if this is going to happen in the next few years, let's get ahead of that now and start using things like passkeys and biometrics as a way to get ready for this new wave where physical cards and numbers are going to be gone.
Interesting. That's a really interesting new reality now that we have to face. I never imagined the 16-digit cards disappearing completely, but that's the reality we are facing and really interesting times ahead. Your platform, as you mentioned earlier, is modular by design. How do businesses actually decide what components they need, and what do you see as the most popular entry point for new customers?
I think it comes down to probably two dimensions. One is the merchant operating online and at the point of sale, or
Right.
just one of those channels, right?
Right.
And again, our APIs and SDKs, APKs are deployable on both point of sale devices as well as payment gateways. So I think that's the first consideration that merchants need to have. And then secondly, it's really around like the use case that they want to offer to their customers, right? Like it might make sense for them to deploy this at some stores, at some branches, et cetera, but not others. And so that's something that we spent a lot of time kind of talking through in a bit more detail. But certainly it opens up it widens their aperture of options. Like when they realize, oh wow, you mean like I could have a just a self-service kiosk that could not only take orders but also process the payment. That creates some really unique opportunities. One other component that we're also seeing a lot of interest in is here in the United States with the new Real ID standard. So this year it was required that all citizens of the United States get a new ID with a new photo taken on it. And with
Right.
those new identification cards, which we're all familiar with and see at the airports now, it allows other companies to access that information, which means that with the same biometric scan that we can do for a payment transaction, we're also able to authenticate the user's age. And this becomes really helpful for making age-dependent sales. So anytime someone's buying alcohol, tobacco,
Right.
cannabis, gambling, anything that has like an age restriction on it, we're able to say, hey, like, yeah, not only is this guy or gal, who they say they are, and they've got the right payment information, but hey, yep, they're above 18 and they're above 21. You're good to go ahead and sell it to them. All of a sudden, then it makes the experience a lot better because the cardholder doesn't have to hand over their card information or their ID anymore.
That's really fascinating, really, really interesting. And you Wink serves all sorts of sectors from stadium concessions to automotive. Which use cases surprised you the most?
Well, the obvious ones have been venues, so events and stadiums, quick service restaurants, right, where speed is really important.
Yeah.
Um, Large omni-channel merchants where they operate in-store, online, and need to have a consistent user experience, both in-store and online. But yeah, I would say like, some of the ones that have surprised me the most have been some kind of fringe use cases with healthcare, actually. So being able to check patients in faster, being able to link, like their insurance information with ID in a very a fast and seamless way. So I think like that the healthcare one has been exciting, and then also like the one I just mentioned around age dependent sales. And we're thinking through that there's a few set of businesses here in the US that are considering even doing like vending machines that can
Right.
sell cigarettes and alcohol and things like that. Which I mean, I remember, gosh, like being like a little kid and seeing those old, cigarette machines. You put in, some quarters, and out would come a pack of cigarettes, and then they disappeared for about 30 years. But anyway, that may be coming might be making a comeback. So stay tuned.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks to your technology and the technology that is emerging. And now coming to the tricky bit, of course, users naturally get worried about, their voice or face storage. How do you handle privacy concerns?
Yeah, well, and privacy, of course, and data security is paramount, right? For any payment company, but
Yeah,
especially for a company that is doing what we're doing. So, we started this business really with the bedrock of being privacy and security being like the foundational layer, because we knew that we'd never be able to get any sort of appropriate funding or partnerships without that foundational layer. And so with the architecture really being around not actually scanning and storing an image of people's face, but using these different biometric vectors, anonymizing that data,
right.
and having really close partnerships with not only the banks but with the major schemes, ensures that we're not only compliant but we're following the same processing rails and set of standards that the entire financial ecosystem is using.
Great, fantastic. And you mentioned this age verification for regulated products. How accurate is the real-time identity verification? And what happens when somebody tries to bypass the system?
Well, yeah, it's very accurate. I mean, I think in order for our solution to be live, there's a governing body that ensures that like there has to be less than like 1 out of 1,000 mismatches of like faces or palm, meaning that like the false positives have to be very very low.
Right.
And so yeah, I mean the proofs in the in our ability to, to really do this day in and day out and have a number of people who can, show up in front of a terminal or a kiosk or a phone, have their face or palm scanned. One thing that it is doing is it is looking for a liveliness detection. So,
Right.
I can't hold up a photo of, I don't know, uh, George Clooney's face and, have his payment credential be processed, right? There's a three-dimensional element that we're looking at when we look at a face, and then similarly for the palm, many modern cameras also have infrared capabilities, and so we're actually looking at the veins beneath the palm itself. So of course there's the aspects of the visual things on the palm, but underneath there's certain vein dimensions that we're able to again better tie back to an individual person.
Right. And now moving more into business impact and the future vision, what kind of conversion improvements are merchants seeing with Wink? Any specific success stories you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, you bet. So, I mean, there's quite a few merchants that are live and using this and have shared statistics. Ones that come to mind are like Jamba Juice, Whataburger. There's numerous events and stadiums. And typically, they will see like and again, it kind of gets back to like what problem they're solving for. So for quick service restaurants, it's often about speed, right? And so like Whataburger and Jamba Juice often saw like a savings of about 1 minute per person during the checkout experience. Um, for events and stadiums like here, I mean, I'm in Seattle, right? And so that when I go to a Mariners game and to the baseball game, the most popular concessions are the self-checkout biometric concessions because you don't have to talk to someone. You can, just pick up your hamburger and beer and be gone, right? And so their biometric concessions are the most popular, and they've publicly stated that they see twice as much traffic as their normal concessions. Um, Also, I mean, again, a little bit biased, but based in Seattle, so Amazon's headquartered here, and Amazon, of course, acquired Whole Foods, and at all major Whole Foods now, there are biometric palm readers that give people the option to use that when they check out. And so all you do is again put your hand over the reader, and it links your Amazon profile. And I think they've got something like 10, 20 million users already signed up with that. You've got companies like Clear at the airport. They've got 30, 40 million active users who have their face in the database, and again, all for like faster, more safer throughput at the security line at the airport.
Right. I mean, there are obviously clear winners here, people who would want to embrace that technology, that there are clear benefits. Are there any industries where you see some resistance, and how do you handle that? How do you break it down for them to see the benefits?
The biggest resistance so far has largely come from a certain demographic that is just resistant to giving their biometric data. And that is squarely within sort of the seniors and boomer generation, where they would much rather use anything else other than sharing their face or their palm. But then the stats are pretty clear. Pretty much every other generation are fine giving their face and palm, compared to some other two-factor authentication or a username and password. And I just do think that is a generational difference because so much of us have gotten comfortable using our phones to unlock, with our face, or first it was our fingerprint, right? And so we've come to realize that this technology is already around us that we're using every day. I mean, gosh, again, I was just at the airport recently, and now when we fly, right, I don't even need to take out my phone or my wallet. Like I have my face scanned. And so I do feel that the comfort and familiarity is just a time thing here in the US. Again, in other places like Asia, that's much more prevalent.
Yeah.
So certainly I think for merchants and sectors that sell predominantly to that demographic, it's going to be harder and slower to adopt.
Right. You're currently working, you're working with Qualcomm on automotive applications. Where else do you see biometrics payments expanding to, and what timeline do you see for the mainstream adoption of biometrics?
Well, I think, mainstream, I mean, candidly, it's mostly the early adopters who are putting this in place now. And the reality is, every merchant who is already taking cards, is doing it in a way that has been in place for, for 30 years. And that's with, entering a 16-digit number and password. And so I do think if we kind of go back to the innovators dilemma and the crossing the chasm, like it certainly is the early adopters who are adopting this now, but all the kind of leading indicators, whether it's the schemes, Visa, MasterCard, who are planning to end of life card numbers themselves, interest from merchants, and then one thing that we haven't spoken about yet is the push from governments to begin mandating and requiring biometrics. And that is mostly happening in second and third world countries, some first world countries, but we've seen this in Vietnam, Mexico, India, many countries in Africa, where they have a large population of people, and instead of just issuing a whole bunch of new ID cards, they've said, "Hey, we're gonna adopt biometrics as a safer, more secure way of identifying our citizens." And they kind of push this initiative under a technology and sometimes a financial inclusion agenda, but it's a way to sort of leapfrog the existing ways of doing things. And of course, with that, about half of these countries have said, okay, great, now that we've got this information, let's enable financial institutions, merchants to use it safely and securely.
Right. And what do you see? Where do you see the intersection now when we look forward, maybe the next 5 years? Where do you see the intersection of identity, payments, and AI heading?
Gosh, I think it's going to become a lot more important, especially with agentic commerce, right? This
Yeah.
idea that you can have an AI agent making payments on your behalf. I mean, that's still like, a lot of people aren't even don't know how to necessarily solve for that yet, or even, do you need to give that agent power of attorney to make a purchase for something that might happen in the future? I mean, a good friend of mine, he travels a lot, and he's been wanting to book a trip to Europe for a while, and he set up a agent to be constantly scanning for flights to Rome. And he said, okay, if you see three tickets at this price, just go ahead and purchase them on my behalf. All right. And so he's given a task and an action to an agent, agent's
Yeah.
thinking, and then at
Right.
some point it could make a purchase.
Right.
And so these are sorts of scenarios that the schemes, the regulators, the banks are still like honestly thinking through,
Yeah.
but still underpin this idea that the transactions need some sort of um, uh, like permission from the
Right.
actual individual to make that transaction. So
Yeah.
certainly like that's really top of mind. And then the other one is also a voice, right? And I'm sure we've all seen different AI kind of spoofing,
Yeah.
kind of deep fake type scenarios where it's really easy to imitate someone's voice. And how
Absolutely.
does that impact kind of the current many financial organizations where that's how they're authenticating individuals when you call in to reset your PIN or reset your password. And Yeah, so I don't have any good answers for you other than it's going to require kind of a lot of advancements from the tech and financial services company, because
Right.
essentially these tools are just it's a bit of a it's a bit of a, I don't know, a gold mine for a fraudster to use in a nefarious way.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it looks like maybe passwords and physical cards will become a thing, an obsolete soon or later, as you mentioned.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think like it feels like to me if I were to prognosticate, if I were to, think about what may happen in the future, it's going to get to things that can link actions with identity and not all the cards that we have in our wallet, our loyalty cards, our payment cards, our insurance card, but it's really finding ways to really link identity to the accounts that we control.
Amazing, amazing. Matt, thank you very much. That was actually quite insightful. We come now to the end of the podcast, but I really appreciate you sharing your insights. You mentioned some things there that actually hadn't even crossed my mind, like when you talk about power of attorney. If this agentic, AI is actually making payments for you, are you giving power of attorney, or are there some legal issues to consider? Really, really interesting stuff for banks and the legal world, of course, to think about.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, thanks.